here in the Holy Land. And Lord, that you are going to show us and speak to us, Lord, through your Spirit, through these sights, Lord. We are right now going to go up the western coast of Israel. Now what we're seeing now is not as, it's going to get more furious as we get towards Jerusalem. What do I mean by that? You're going to see a lot more sights around Jerusalem. You're going to see several now, but then it's going to start picking up. A prophet in Jesus' day, and there were lots of prophets in Jesus' day, would make a circuit. They would not go directly to Jerusalem to announce themselves. They would go around the outskirts of Israel and collect a following. Jesus did the exact same thing. Went around the outskirts of Israel, collect the following, then they make their ascent to Jerusalem. And of course, in Palm Sunday, they accepted him as King of the Jews. That was only after 3 years of making a circuit around Israel. Now, he would go back to Jerusalem every now and then for the feast, but that was that 3-year capping off. So you're doing the exact same thing that a prophet would do. You're going to go around Jerusalem, around Israel, and make your ascent to Jerusalem. You're going to go up to Jerusalem. This is a hippodrome. How many ever saw Ben-Hur? Ben-Hur, when they rode the horses all around. This is an actual hippodrome from Jesus' time. Herod the Great built it. Okay, that's down there. It's just been uncovered not too long ago. This is the Crusader Castle. You can see the castle walls, and there's a moat in front of it. Over there, you'll go see that in a bit. See that little, Brittany, point to that little, now go over there to that little line that's coming across. Keep going. Right there. That's an aqueduct. They took water, he took water, and it only drops an inch, I think, in 8 miles, isn't it? Or something like
One
that.
per mile, yeah.
1 per mile. 8 miles away, there's fresh water, and he had it in an aqueduct coming into this city. It's unbelievable. And they called him, like, well, he said they called him Herod the Great, not because he was a great person, because he was a great builder.
And Herod the Great decided to build the biggest seaport that I'm talking about on the bus to overshadow that of Joppa and that of Akko. Well, all geology here says this is not a good place to build a port. So what did he do? Started putting like wooden frames, one next to the other, all filled with rocks, and until he had this shape. Okay? And this was the entrance.
Yep.
Okay? It's all artificial.
Yep.
How did the rocks hold together? He brought from volcanic ashes from Rome, and he dumped the volcanic with the conglomerate beaten ground here. So the minute the volcanic rock touched the water, it became like concrete. And this is how, if you take an airplane, look down, you could see the remains of the port. But why did he build it like this, in this direction, which is southwest? The back is southwest, because here at this place almost, the River Nile comes from Africa on its way to the Mediterranean. If this is the Mediterranean, if he builds the entrance to the port this side, it will be dumped with the sand coming from Africa.
Yep.
So that's why he built it back here. He did not care about
Really
that.
amazing.
And also, we have the gentle breeze comes from the north. That's north. The entrance to the port was north. And from the north, you always have very gentle breeze. That means calm sea. This could take 500 boats at a time, and it was 2 parts, outer and inner. Okay? The outer, if you wanted to rest, if you already brought goods to be stored in here, and you were not planning to leave the same day, you could dock, you could leave your boat in here. Here, this was kept for the boats bringing goods, and there was a series of warehouses here. They stored the goods, and then they went out. Look, what is really significant is that here there was a staircase that took you to the temple of Augustus. Herod the Great built a temple for Augustus here that could have been seen from miles deep in the sea. If people wanted to go here and worship, they could do that. But at the same time, Herod the Great said, well, Caesar is not important than I. Let me do something to immortalize my name. So, right here, on another spot, he built his private palace.
Okay, we're going to go into the theater, and these entrances are called something. Does anybody know what they're called? Needle? Nope. The needle's for a gate. It's like that.
Think of a bad word.
Think of a word that's kind of makes you sick to your stomach. It's a vomitorium. What happens is, people vomit out of the, that's where we get our word vomit from. They vomit out of the theater when it's done, and that's a vomitory. It also served as air passages, you'll see if we go to Bet Shan. We talked about Herod the Great, and I wanted to show you something before we go in there. This, how many see this little relief in here? Like an edging? That tells you that this is a stone from Herod the Great. Herod the Great's builders and architects would cut up a relief. You'll see this all over Jerusalem. So you know that this is an original stone. Now you know that those up there are put on later, they're reconstruction, but it would have been normally like this, and a lot of these would have had polished marble or limestone on top of it. So when you see the Colosseum in Rome, for example, it looks like this, but they were all polished marble. Well, where's the marble go? When people come in and they want to build their houses, the first thing they're going to do is come and take all this marble off of here. So over the years, it's all gone. But these are all Herodian stones, these ones with the reliefs. And then we'll go in and show you the acoustics of this theater and how it was used. Amphitheater is the full circle. So if you look at this place, this looks the same as a football stadium. Our football stadiums come from here. They have the exact same design as a theater and amphitheater. And as a matter of fact, the one in the Colosseum in Rome had a tarp that was pulled over it. It was like the Astrodome. They actually pulled a tarp over it. And here, they'd have.
It was called Villum.
Yeah, and they'd have slaves pull down, and a tarp would come to hide this sun. And again, remember, you're oriented the same way they were. So if there's something in the morning that came in, that sun was there, they'd pull that tarp over so that would cover you all. And of course, they'd have probably statues down in those niches. You probably have a large wall back there where they had other statues, and they'd have naval battles. They'd have a bunch of different things that were here that were in the arts. Today they still do it. They still have concerts here, and it's a great spot for acoustics. But this is the theater.
Yeah, theater is a horseshoe. Amphi means two.
Right.
We'll make it this way. See the shape? This is where gladiators fought and where Christians were fed to the wild animals. And this is Colosseum. Round. Colosseum, amphitheater, theater. Yep. So this is theater. We're found in this place that's called Cavia. Cavia, the seating place. I'm standing now in Ikuni. This is Ikuni, kind of the passage in the seating area. And as you can see, look, the steps are not deep as here, because here people sat. And that's the orchestra, this half a circle down there, where the chorus used to stand, sing, and dance to take you from one scene to another, from one act to another. Then the stage where the actors acted, and then behind the other part of the stage was a very high wall, as high as the upper seat up there. And then the ropes were tied from that side to the upper rope, and tarp on top to protect people's heads from the sun. What about the rain? Maybe look, 200 years after the building of this theater by Herod, another half a circle was added to make it look like a Colosseum. Okay? Maybe there they protected their heads from when it rained.
We told you about Acts chapter 10 and Cornelius, and there's another thing that happened here. Paul was here. Paul was brought here before his sending out because he appealed to Caesar. So appealing to Caesar from the Jews, he was sent here because he's a Roman, he's a born Roman. He cannot be whipped or condemned unless Caesar really kind of commands it. So he's appealing to Caesar, very smart. And King Agrippa and King Felix are here. I remember them. And Festus. So they all hear him. He comes in front of them. Actually, he probably was in this theater, probably being either stating his case or being brought out. Now there's a lot of different places there. There's the stairs to the barracks that he was actually on and talk to the people, but they'd usually drag him into a theater so that they could hear a case because they did it publicly. Okay, you're still talking about a democracy, a republic. So here's where he almost convinces Agrippa to be a Christian. So this is a powerful thing. Let me read to you. Okay, now it's a couple chapters, chapter 23, 24, 25, and 26 of Acts. It says, Then Agrippa said to Paul, You are permitted to speak for yourself. So Paul stretched out his hand and answered for himself. I think myself happy. And again, I read that and I started to do something. When Paul stretches out his hand, there's a reason for that. It's what makes me think he's here. Because a lot of times, to silence the crowd, Caesar would stretch out his hand. So Paul stretching out his hand is there for a reason. He's probably in this theater doing this. Okay. Then Agrippa said to Paul, You are permitted to speak for yourself. So Paul stretched out his hand, chapter 26, and answered for himself. I think myself happy. King Agrippa, because today I shall answer for myself before you concerning all the things of which I am accused of by the Jews. They believe he was actually here about 2 years before this happens, especially because you are expert in all customs and questions which have to do with the Jews. Therefore, I beg you to hear me patiently. My manner of life from my youth, which was spent from the beginning among my own nation at Jerusalem, all the Jews know. They know me from the first, if they were willing to testify that according to the strictest sect of our religion, I have lived a Pharisee. And now I stand and am judged by the hope of the promise made by God to our fathers. To this purpose our 12 tribes, earnestly serving God day and night, hope to attain. For this hope's sake, King Agrippa, I am accused by the Jews. Why should it be thought incredible by you that God raises the dead? Now he's separating a bunch of things here. Paul is really very, very smart. He's single-handedly starting. The Pharisees have come to try to accuse him. There's people from Jerusalem here. They want to see him get a death sentence. But he's starting to separate. He's using the customs of the people against themselves. When he tells Agrippa, why would you think it incredible somebody to raise the dead? Agrippa is a pagan. Okay, so Agrippa understands about the gods and the systems of the gods raising people, because it's in their mythology. So he's using something, then pulling him in. It goes on to say, then he gives his history, and he starts to say something right towards the end. And again, he's going through a huge history here. He says this, then Agrippa said to Paul, you almost persuade me to become a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me today might become both almost and altogether such as I am, except for these chains. So if this place is filled with people, says, not only you, I'd rather this whole place get saved today. This whole place accept Christ. And Paul said, and when he had thus said these things, the king stood up, as well as the governor and Bernice, and those who sat with them, which again leads us to believe it's in the public area. And when they had gone aside and talked among themselves, saying, this man is doing nothing deserving of death or chains. Then Agrippa said to Festus, this man might have been set free if he had not appealed to Caesar. So he would have done it. He had the power to do it. But because Paul appealed to Caesar, he's above Festus and Agrippa and Felix. So he has to go to Caesar. But this is an amazing spot. Think about it. Many of the places he's brought into have a theater. He's brought in there, and he is the one that is speaking. I'll tell you what really hit me not too long ago when I saw this. We have, and I don't like the word crusades. You hear the word crusade, I hope you'll never say that word again when you hear somebody saying, well, you know, Billy Graham had a crusade. That's a bad word. Crusade in the Holy Land means raping and pillaging and everything. So revival's great, but crusade I don't really use. But could you imagine, it's kind of interesting. I think about today, and I think about people and ministers going into coliseums or big venues for football and preaching. But they weren't the first ones to do that. Paul was. And Paul didn't do it with the staging and all the theatrics behind it. He was drug in there because of his faith. He didn't do it because he paid for the theater and paid for the vendors and he had a big campaign. He did it because they dragged him in front of everyone so that they could kill him. One time they actually stoned him and beat him, drug him out for dead, and he resurrected. So it's really an amazing thing to think that God was putting Paul in front of people, and he was using the pagan theaters that honored the gods to do it. And isn't that just like God? He's not stopped by anything that we think is dedicated to one thing or another. If you're willing to be used of God, he's going to use you wherever you are. And that's what he did with Paul. He just used it. I really believe people came to see Paul because he was like the original Timex watch. He took a licking and kept on ticking. I think people just didn't understand him. Why did this guy get beat up and still do the same thing? And he was like an anomaly. He was just somebody that, let's go see Paul, because it's almost like an act. You know, it's almost like, why does this guy do this? But it's the power of God that's resident inside of him. So being here today, I just want to be able to have us bow our heads just for a moment, and let me just give you a little bit of the spiritual application for you today. You know, we live in a world where there's so many people who think that they're number one, or that so-and-so is important, or that this person's important, or this person gets more money, or this person is famous. But you know what Paul did? He made the individual famous. He didn't make, the Caesars were already famous. Nobody could aspire to be a Caesar. The reason he took down a pagan world is because he elevated the common man to be a son of God or a daughter of God. And that's really exciting to me. It's exciting to know that we are something in God. We're not some subject, but that we are a citizen, and that we are a joint heir. Think what Jesus says, a joint heir. Caesar would never call anybody a joint heir. Jesus called us a joint heir. So today, let's just thank God for your potential in him, and just allow him to continue to use you in the places where you are. Lord, again, we thank you, we praise you today. We ask, Lord, that you continue to use us, Lord. We thank you for elevating us to that spot that the cross brings us to, making us all one with you. Bless us today, Lord God. Bless each individual life, Lord. Use us to our potential. In Jesus' name, amen. One of the things I want to tell you before you go explore it is, just so you know biblically, Herod the Great, and Waleed said it, died in 4 BC. He was the one that sent the soldiers to try to kill the baby Jesus. So we know that Jesus was born somewhere in between 6 and 4 BC. He was not born 0 or 1. And he didn't die in 33 AD. He died probably in 29 AD. So whenever you hear people say about that, a lot of Western society will talk about Jesus. Jesus was born somewhere in the neighborhood before Herod died. So it had to be somewhere between 4 BC and 6 BC.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you hear people talk, and that means he had to die, he lived 33 years, so he had to die at 29 AD. And we know historically those are the numbers that fit. And so when you hear somebody say Jesus died at 33 AD, that's wrong. And you've seen it in pictures and everything. We can prove it's wrong.
The age of 33, yeah.
Yeah, age of 33.
Maybe 28 AD.
Right, but it was 4 to 6 BC where he was born. And Herod the Great, his son, was the one that gave all the problems because they divided this land up, and he was the one, the Herod, that would be eaten by worms. Herod Agrippa was really that's the one that Jesus called the fox. He says, I'm not going to, you go tell that fox that I'm going to do my Father's work today and tomorrow. Okay? That's a sarcophagi, and what you're looking at right now, and it's made in, that's probably limestone and granite. That one actually looks like it's granite, and they were, sometimes they would be used by the Jews a lot, and the Greeks and the Romans. It means, the sarcophagus means flesh eater. What they would do is, it comes from the same thing as an ossuary. You would put the body in there, and the flesh would be eaten off of the body after about a year. Then you take the bones and you inter them in a family grave. So that the ossuaries and the sarcophagi are the same principle. The ossuaries were only used in the 1st century, so we know the ossuary is in Jesus' time. This sarcophagi is going to be used for hundreds of years. And again, sarcophagi means flesh eater, and that's what its purpose is, to take the flesh off the bones so that the bones could be interred in a family plot. Water horses. And they must have just uncovered that. You know, they keep digging here. They must have found it in the dirt. Can you imagine? You actually have to get far from it to see what it is.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a ramming thing. Well, it's fit into a wall. See?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fit into a wall. Unreal. Look at this. Is this not? Can you imagine this in that day? When I first came here, it was just dirt up to here. Sometimes they'd be covered purposely, like the Crusaders could care less about the Herodian cities. So what they would do is take some of the building things, like the limestone, they bring it over to the castle, because the castle's right over there, and they'd build their castle with it. And they didn't care if they destroyed anything. Sometimes people come in and destroy everything just to show that they're more powerful than what was here. Isn't that beautiful down there, Cheryl? Hey, you can go down to this wall over here and pull stuff out of that wall. See where the plastic is?
Yeah.
Mark and I pulled all kinds of stuff out of that wall. Look at this. Look at all the pieces of stuff down there. I'm telling you, you could spend forever doing that. Unbelievable. Amazing, isn't it?
Oh.
I don't think you can. You can walk down this way. Hey, Charlie, come on, I'll show you Pontius Pilate's marker. Good. You get you some from the Valley of Elah. David's stones. Arba. Know. What you're looking at is Pontius Pilate was the Roman prefect who presided over the trial of Jesus of Nazareth in Matthew chapter 27. The content of the inscription and the use of the Latin language hint at the level of Romanization throughout the province in Caesarea at the beginning of the 1st century. And basically what it says here is, this is a replica. It says, Pontius Pilatus, the prefect of Judea, dedicated a building to the Emperor Tiberius. And that's what that said. That was found. This is a replica, but that was found somewhere really close to the Colosseum. So we know that Pontius Pilate existed. The marker from Pontius Pilate.
Oh, yeah.
It's in Latin. Actually, Tiberium, this is right here is Septervirium, and right over here is Pontius Pilatus. This is the U. See, P-I-L-A-T, and it's a V and S. That's Pilate. Pilatus. Sure. This is his palace. That was his swimming pool. Is that not unbelievable? And you can see the tile floor in it. There's one place over here you can see a tile. Look at down here. See how they made it? See the potsherds they put on the side? See the clay against it? So that's one of the little rooms. But there's a spot where you can see the tile. This is the tile. Is that the tile floor? No. It might be in the pool. There's a spot where you can see the tile floor. But this was his palace. It was built in the rock. He brought all this rock in, volcanic rock. Remember he said it turns into like concrete as soon as you put it in the water? Look at it all. And he built a palace right here. You probably can. But he built a palace right here so that you can see it from sea. Small rooms. Probably the way it was. Just the seats on that side, because it would fill quite a bit, all the way down, and then they would race this way. This is the Hippodrome in Caesarea Maritima. Horses, chariots would run right around this dome. There's some paintings from the other side, from Herod the Great's time, and they're recreating it.
city. This is where it begins. This is the southern wall and the gate. But look, in front of everywhere there was this moat. Okay? The moat, not as was thought in the beginning, was flooded with the seawater. It was a dry moat. It doesn't make any difference actually whether it was flooded or dry. First, the enemy had to come up here, then jump down with ladders or ropes, whatever. In the meantime, the defenders of the city, look at the loopholes there. They were wide inside like this.
You'll see those in the city.
So you can aim the way you want at the enemy, while it was difficult for you to hit. And also there was some openings at the bottom where people from inside would come out suddenly, quickly, shoot and go behind the bars. So this was therefore the beginning of the Crusader city. There, that area where the restaurant today, there was the Crusader Citadel. So today we'll be in two places that had something to do with the Crusaders. This is the first one, and the second one is the more beautiful one that was the capital for almost 100 years, which is Akko.
Right there, those are anchor stones. You see them, they'd be tied onto boats. And to the right of those are amphora. They would ship their wine in these jars that had no bottom. They couldn't stand up, so that when they were in the ship, they rocked and they kept the wine mixed. They found some of those, I was talking about diving in here, they found some of those off of the Mediterranean coast a couple years ago. Yeah, 4,000-year-old wine bottles with wine in them. Yeah. And right over here, I think, did we come to the Cardo? No, it's right over there.
No, it's up there.
The Cardo is the main street. It comes from the word cardiac. So you'll see that all over Israel, especially in the Old City. So Cardo, there's the main street is called the Cardo, and the Secundo Cardo is the secondary street, but it has to do with the heart. That's where we get our word cardiac. It's the main thoroughfare where everything comes through. Maximus.
Okay, this is a rich man's coffin. Usually people prepare their coffins or burial caves while they were still alive. In this case, we're talking about a rich man here who made this out of marble. Usually poor man's coffins were made of sandstone. This is these were not found in their original place, not in situ.
Yeah.
They were found somewhere in the fields and brought to be displayed here. And opposite or in front of me is the minaret of a mosque. Until beginning the end of the 19th century, the Turks brought some Muslims from Bosnia. They told, at that time, the Turks were the masters of the whole of the area. And being Muslims, they told the Muslims in Bosnia, why would you stay there under the oppression of the Croats and the Serbs? We have enough room for you. And they brought some of them to live here in Caesarea. There was a lot of rooms in here and houses. And this was their mosque.
And let me tell you something, what Waleed's saying is, a lot of times when you get to a place like, remember we told you that Herod had a temple here? We've been up there. When Christianity comes in, those temples weren't torn down. They were just redone. So those temples became the churches. The reason why our churches look like Roman temples is because they used to be Roman temples. So when you see a church, it's built like a Roman temple because the basilica, because the Roman temples were actually redone as churches. And then when you see Islam coming in and taking them over, you'll see the same structure maybe, but you'll see them put up a minaret.
And quite often they took some of those beautiful capitals and columns to decorate their mosques.
Right.
Like in this case, columns were taken from here to Akko,
right,
to the mosque, which I'll show you today. But there's no way to tell the Muslims today we need those columns for archaeology.
So they would, what we're talking about, scavengers really. They'd scavenge from one, whoever's the conqueror is going to rule those areas. So whatever it used to be is going to be the new thing. And that's what you see all over the Holy Land. You see it in Rome. In Rome, if you go to the Forum in Rome, you'll see all the temples. They all became churches, but they were all originally temples. Showed you that this was the entrance. Remember we showed you that? This is what this would have looked like. It's absolutely gorgeous if you would have seen it at that time. Does everybody see this picture? Now look over here. That's the entrance. That's the one he built.
This is some of the remains that date back to 2,000 years ago. Here was the open, or the outer port. And roughly where we are standing was the entrance to the inner port. Well, I cannot see it here. No, here. Here.
Yeah.
This is where we're standing.
Yep.
That's why I say, you know, roughly here, this was the divider between the outer port behind me and the inner port. Only boats with goods could go in. And look at the series of vaults there. That was the warehouses below that ramp. You can see a stairway as well, right?
Yep.
So people, after, you know, wanted to go and visit Herod, Caesar's temple that stood on top, could take that stairway, and therefore the temple was higher up. The temple for Augustus Caesar. I think that St. Paul took the boat on several occasions on his missionary work in Asia Minor, and later on he was forced to take the boat on his way to Rome.
From here.
Okay.
Yes. I was reading a book written by Dan Brown. It's called Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
I really don't know how people might, you know, ethically speaking, can write something like that.
Oh, I know.
And even that made room to some movie director. I heard like a few months ago, he said something like blasphemous. He said, it's as if he was part of all the excavation. Yeah. We found the tomb of Christ, his wife, and his son.
Yep.
What is this? So Dan Brown writes about finding actually the Crusaders being here. They claim to find the chalice that Christ used in the Last Supper. But then Dan Brown has a different explanation for the chalice. What is this?
Yep.
I mean, you have to ignore all that.
And you know, even the place where they found that they say was Jesus, I mean, I've been in the archaeology, BAR, Biblical Archaeology Review, and it's underneath an apartment building, and it's been locked up for about 8 years, and what they found is they found ossuaries. Remember, we were just looking at the sarcophagus. They found ossuaries, and they were inscribed. One of the ossuaries was inscribed Mary, one was inscribed Joseph, one was inscribed Matthew. Now just think of this, one was inscribed Jude, and they said, well, this is Jesus' family. One was inscribed Lucy, and they said this is Jesus' family. But basically, Matthew wasn't in Jesus' family. You have
who is this Lucy?
Then they found out that there wasn't a Lucy there. That actually somebody said it was there. They claimed that was Jesus because Mary was there. They claimed that was Jesus' wife, Mary Magdalene. They didn't find the body of Jesus or the name of Jesus. And what they did is they sensationalized nothing.
My daughter is called Mary.
Well, and there's lots of people Jesus' day called Jesus.
So what?
So the most common name in Jesus' day was Joseph for a man. It was Mary for a woman, and Jesus was right down the line. So finding something that says that means nothing. And that's how they make all their money. They just sensationalize on something that doesn't even fit.
I'm sorry to say that, but this is a fact, even the Muslims here felt very hurt when they heard this.
Oh sure, because they venerate Mary.
They venerate very much. Mm-hmm. And Christ as well.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I know.
Charlie, here's a good Coke commercial.
Yeah, that's
And it's in Hebrew.
it's in Hebrew.
Say it.
Coca-Cola.
Well, they'd say Coca-Cola in Hebrew.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
There was a drawbridge. What's a drawbridge in times of peace? It was lowered to lean on the other side so people would walk on. In times of war, it was raised backwards, and you'd have a moat all around.
Okay, what you're looking at is a famous Roman arch, and this is where Herod the Great took water from 8 miles up from Mount Carmel, took it all the way down through an aqueduct to Caesarea Maritima, which is beyond that spot where you see the little derricks. And the engineers had engineered it to the point where it only dropped an inch every mile. Rome was tremendous in their building, and also they invented cement, and they used it. The way they used it was they had the whites of eggs. You can imagine how many eggs are used in there, and pumice and volcanic rock. They mix it together, and it forms the cement. So quite a feat to take it 8 miles for fresh water. And up on top, you can go over to the side and see that is the actual duct, and it's all lined with the type of plaster so that the water would flow well. 8 miles up, they let it naturally flow from Mount Carmel. 1 inch difference per every mile. So it actually, gravity floated 8 miles down to Caesarea. All the way down. Yeah, this went all the way down. And the amazing thing about it is, think about it, it's on sand, and look how, it's not moving because it has all the cement under it.